And here we are. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the All Portable Discussion Zone. It's a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops. My name is Charlie, and the call sign is November Juliet 7 Victor. So tonight's live stream is a special episode outside of our regular first and third Sunday evening schedule. And our next regular live stream is going to be on June 5th. We're going to interview somebody who is a mountaineer and does a lot of soda. His name's Pat, K7GUD. So encourage you to come and join us for that coming up in about a week. But tonight we're participating in the YouTubers Hamfest, and we'll be talking a little bit about learning Morse code. So with me tonight is one of the evening's co-hosts, Dan, KC7MSU.
Good evening.
And then also, I'm pleased to introduce you to tonight's guest, Kurt, 80WE, Morse Code Ninja.
Well, thank you for the warm welcome. It's great to be here, Charlie and Dan.
Thank you. And of course, we have a bunch of people in chat we know, and we really are glad that you're with us. Comments and questions are welcome. Please put them in the chat, and we'll address them as we go along. I think this is going to be a great topic tonight. And don't forget that this show is converted to a podcast and is available through most podcast players about 24 hours after the show. So with that, we just popped over here, and you were probably just been sitting here wondering where the heck we are, huh, Kurt?
Oh, I was patient, but I knew you would show up. Party of one is no fun.
Yeah. Well, we just came over here from David in Ham Radio Solutions. I don't know, you probably weren't watching that, but we had a great discussion over there. And it was all about some of the gear, the technology that you can use to learn Morse code through the internet without even getting on the air. So it was pretty fun.
Well, that's
so I wanted to show a picture here because let's see if I can bring this up before we get going, because it's just how I am. And many of you've seen it already before, but I just love this. So Kurt and me and Brian spent an hour and a half. Was it an hour and a half or more or less?
I lost track of time. It was been more.
at least an hour and a half talking Morse code at the Dayton Hamvention. I mean, people were walking all around us doing all kinds of things. We were just sitting there talking about Morse code. It was such a great pleasure to talk to you there, Kurt. Really appreciate the insights, and that was even before we had you scheduled, and then we just happened to run into you, right? We already knew we were going to come on here. But what's been going on with you the last little bit?
Well, as you mentioned, I went to Hamvention. I was quite honored. I wasn't expecting to go this year. I was anticipating going next year, but I was invited to receive an award from CW Ops, and so I had to say yes,
yes,
to receive that in person. So it was really an honor to accept the award for advancing the art of CW, along with the Long Island CW Club. And I didn't quite catch the ZL person, so I don't want to say it. I think I know who it is.
Yeah.
So it was really a great honor, and it was such a great and wonderful opportunity to meet many people that I've come to know at a distance, and having some of those eyeball QSOs was just delightful.
Yeah, it was the pleasure. It was one of the highlights of Dayton for me was to meet you in person. Cool. Well, let's dive right into this. You know, we've got people all primed and ready to go from the previous stream, and also I put out on social media. I said, hey, we're gonna have Kurt on. If you have any questions about that you want to ask, and you may not be able to be in chat, or you just want to ask right now, let me know. And lo and behold, I had a few questions. They were all the same question, though.
It could be either good or bad.
The question was, how do I even get started with Morse code? I want to learn it, but how do I get started?
That is a wonderful question. So there's multiple parts to this. So the first thing is to make sure that you're really in a position to commit some time. Morse code isn't something you just learn overnight. And depending on what your goal is, it may take even longer, especially if you have your sights set really high, not just to get on the air and make some easy QSOs, say, state party QSO contacts or special event QSOs. Those are pretty easy. So part of it, as we had talked about, Charlie, is finding the time. I think that's really critical, finding time that you can dedicate to practicing. And it seems that can be a stumbling block for many people getting started, is finding a consistent time, ideally once a day, or not ideally, but just starting with at least once a day, 15 minutes. Ideally would be twice a day for 15, 20 minutes, but just any amount of time every day is a great way to get started. But as far as which path that you take, it depends on if you're more self-disciplined and have more of a structure in mind, or whether you want some of that guidance, mentoring to help you on your journey and to help you get started. So I think that's really a precursor question is, do you want that kind of assistance or not? If you do want assistance, there's two wonderful organizations. We've already mentioned both of them this evening. So the Long Island CW Club has a great program. It runs continuously, so you're able to jump in at any point. And then CW Ops has the CW Academy program, structured a little bit differently. Both are great. I think you should check both out if you're interested in that mentoring and having some of that structure provided for you. If you're interested in learning on your own or trying that first, there are a lot of options. Some of you may be familiar with the resources that I've created and provide, which is through the Morse Code Ninja website, and then podcasts and YouTubes and other distribution channels. But there's also just a plethora of options that you can run on your phone, whether iOS or Android. And then there's also a multitude of dedicated applications that will run on a PC. Most of them run under Windows, but others can run under Linux and Mac, oftentimes using Wine or Crossover.
Let's see. Shane right away says, setting aside time has been my downfall. I need to make it a routine and stick to it. What do you think about that? I mean, that's pretty much what you said, right?
Yes. A couple ideas to consider. One that may be helpful is if you can practice right before you go to bed, make that a part of your routine to wind down. Personally, I find practicing right before I fall asleep to, help my mind let go of all the stress and craziness that might have happened that day. So it serves a dual purpose. Other people may find time if they commute to work or commute somewhere regularly. That might be an option. For others, maybe it could be a part of your morning routine when you first get up. It could be maybe you work and you can practice at lunch, even just 10 minutes. Anything to help with some forward momentum really is key.
Yeah, and so say somebody actually has that established. So they're like, okay, I've got the time, I'm setting it aside. Where do they start then? Do they start memorizing the letters then, or what?
So there's two approaches. One is the Koch, and then the other is Farnsworth. And both of these approaches, you're going to be learning one letter at a time. And as you master each new letter, you will continue to add until you're able to copy all 40 characters before moving on to a more specific goal that you're wanting to achieve.
And then the other one, did you mention both of them already?
Yeah, so both of them sorry to elaborate. So both of them you're going to learn one new character at a time. With Farnsworth, which most people are drawn towards, you learn at a modified speed. So the general wisdom is to avoid getting stuck learning Morse code, say at 5 words a minute, because you'll end up stuck typically at 10 to 13, and it'll be a real struggle to get over that. So you'll want to learn at a minimum speed of at least character speed of 20 words a minute. But with Farnsworth, to give yourself some space, so it doesn't feel so overwhelming initially, you dialed back the spacing between the characters and perhaps the words. So, you might have an overall speed between 5 and 10 words a minute is fairly common for beginning to learn each new character. And so typically, whether you're using my content or other means of copying Morse code, initially you'll be learning them in 5 character random groups oftentimes.
Got it.
Whereas Coke is a little bit different. Coke, you learn at full speed from the get-go. And the idea is, you just start with 2 characters. M and K might be a common starting point. And as soon as you reach 90% accuracy, then you immediately add a 3rd character. And as soon as you reach 90% accuracy, copying these random characters, you just keep adding characters until you reach the full set. The issue with Farnsworth, you have to keep in mind, once you learn all 40 characters, now you know the code at a non-standard speed. So the idea is that you have to then work towards a standard speed. People oftentimes use 2 approaches. One is you can begin to slow the character speed down towards what was the overall speed, and then you can also kind of meet in the middle. So you can push up that overall word speed, slow down the character speed, and perhaps arrive at 15 words a minute at a standard speed. So there's a little bit of extra work or time once you learn using the Farnsworth method before you're likely to be ready to get on the air.
Okay. If you don't mind, let's go to your page here real quick and take a quick look at that, and then we'll transition to some other topics. But let's see here. So one last thing then would be, tell us again, sticking with the people that one question from the social media. If I'm brand new and I want to learn Morse code, okay, we got the time. We need to set aside time. Okay, I've established that I want to learn by myself. So then, where would we go from there on your page to kind of to help ourselves out with that?
So if you're going to use the resources I've created, you would go to the Learn page, which is at the top. And there's quite a bit of advice, which I would recommend reading through. And you have 2 choices on how you want to listen. You could either use a podcast player on your phone or your computer, or you can just use YouTube. So these are the direct YouTube links.
Right here?
Yep. And so you would start at the top, where you start with lesson 1. And the very first thing that you're going to do is just get a feel for that character. So in this case, we're starting with the letter T. The sequence of characters that are presented in the course mirror the CW Academy program. So they can be used in conjunction, or this course plan can be used in conjunction with the initial beginners CW Academy class. And then if you go back, I'll just give you an idea. The general theme here is I want to get you to copying something useful as quickly as possible, but I can't give you stuff that you haven't been introduced. So you start with introducing a new character, and then we start copying random characters. A single character is repeated 3 times. So in this case, lesson 3, you'll just be hearing either T or A, because that's all that's been introduced. Then the next lesson is a little harder. You just get to hear it once, no repeats. So it'll just be T or A instead of T, 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 A. And then we move on to 2 characters, 2 random characters, then 3 random characters. And once more characters have been introduced, if you scroll down just a little bit more, you'll see that when we introduce new letters, we'll start learning words. And once we start learning some numbers, which you may have to scroll down to the first number, then we'll start copying call signs with the characters that are already been introduced. So this approach is a little different as far as oftentimes how a Farnsworth like course runs. I try to get you to learn useful things as quickly as possible. And then once all the characters you've learned through those, as I mentioned earlier, the key will be to move towards standard timing. And if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom, there's a lot of lessons. You'll see that we begin to close that non-standard timing and move towards a standard 20 words a minute.
Oh.
But you could potentially take a different approach to getting a different speed. Like I said, you could try meeting in the middle, or you could slow it down. But I think it's more helpful to just aim for a full 20 words a minute.
Yeah, cool. And then you said there was YouTube and there was podcasts. So what would one do?
So if you scroll down just a little bit, stop. So these special URLs that end in .rss, if you copy this URL into a podcast player, what's nice about this, it may be more convenient to listen on your mobile device in particular, because it will take care of automatically downloading those. And on YouTube, unless you're paying for their service, you won't be able to play YouTube with the screen off on your phone. You have to pay for that feature. So this could be much more convenient. And it also remembers, just like YouTube, where you left off. So if you come back to it the next day, it knows exactly if you got to 1 minute and 30 seconds in this particular file. So
I found this particular item very useful and helpful, so I didn't have to, download a bunch of files, decide which ones I wanted to move over to my phone. I thought this was a great way to go.
Yep. And for those people who do want to download the files, the links are there. They're zip files.
Let's see,
and they are pretty large, so just be aware of that. They're on the same page here. You just have to.
For some reason, it froze. My page froze, I think. Yeah. Let me just copy that and reopen it because it froze.
No worries. The other thing I was going to mention while we're waiting, one of the cool things that I've done in the last 6 months or so, I've added closed captioning to virtually all of the YouTube videos. So if you're a little bit hard of hearing, you may find that helpful. Or if you're doing call sign practice, you may find it helpful to turn on the closed captioning, because even spoken letters, some of them can be very similar sounding.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's a great
All
feature.
right. So you said it was on the same page. There's a place. Where were we at?
Yep. The kind of bottom where you're currently at, just in there. You see, it says if you would prefer to have audio files to listen on your device. Yep.
So just click on one of those.
Yep. And that will.
Yep. It'll download the zip right there.
Yep.
Got it. Yeah. Very good. Okay, let me remove this. There was a question in the comments. I promise we'll get to some of this other stuff. I really want to hear about the 3D printing, by the way, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Let's go to here. That 12 word per minute hump deflated my desire to pass my 20 words per minute.
Yes.
Any ideas on how to get past that hump?
Yes, actually, it's common, which is why the going advice is please don't learn Morse code at 5 words a minute. It's easy to learn at that speed, but you're going to beat yourself up eventually. So in the case of if you already have learned at a slower speed and you are stuck at that 10 to 13 words per minute barrier, what it comes down to is learning at a character speed that you cannot count. That is really the key. And it may feel like you are learning Morse code over. And to some degree, that is true. One of the hardest things to master is instant character recognition. And that's what you're going to be relying on at a minimum when you're copying 20 words a minute or faster. And so the key is to, like I said, at least 20 words a minute. Here recently, I had someone reach out to me who was really struggling. They could still count even at 30 words a minute, even 35, which that's pretty amazing. And he started learning instant character recognition at 50 just to make sure he couldn't count. And it was just an amazing breakthrough when he realized it was just go faster to start learning instant character recognition. So
I find the same kind of thing, especially anything between less than 20. I'm a notorious counter. And if I found that if I, listen at 25, okay, I can't count them that fast. So getting away from that, I think it really helps. But anything less than that, I go right back into that. I'm a notorious counter.
Yep. If you think it would be helpful, I could copy the different types of copy. I don't know if everyone's familiar with what we mean by instant character recognition, instant word recognition, all these different ways of copying, but I could quickly go through that.
Yeah, go over it. Yeah.
So instant character recognition is something that you'll probably hear many people talk about. And it's what's going on is when you hear the sound didada, which is R, you just instantly know that it's R. You don't have a mental lookup table. It just immediately comes to you without any kind of mental processing. Then you have what many people call instant word recognition, where instead of listening for a character sound pattern, you're listening for the entire sound pattern of a word or an abbreviation. And truthfully, most people initially learn CQ, 5NN, 599, their call sign, as words. Most people can recognize them much, much, much faster than they can anything else.
Can we pause real quick? Richard says, hey guys, if you could explain the term counting.
Yes. So this is something that we try to avoid doing. Counting is, so think about the letter B, da, 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 da. If you're counting the dits to distinguish that it really is a B, that's what we mean by counting.
So like you're like, oh, there's three dits there. That means it's a B.
Yeah. Or really
or
common.
worse, I try to count them all, the das and the dits.
Yeah, counting both. Or like recognizing, was that an S or an H? So did you hear 3 dits or did you hear 4? That's what we mean by counting. And
yeah, you're not listening for the tonal quality of a letter. You're counting. You're literally counting das and dits instead of listening for the tone quality of it.
Yes, you want to hear that whole character sound pattern.
Yeah, cool. Where were we? I interrupted us. I think it was instant word character. Yeah.
So we covered instant character recognition, instant word recognition. There's something that I call instant partial recognition. What this is when you are recognizing the sound pattern of prefixes of words, suffixes of words, and some common character combinations like str. And then here recently, I've learned of something called Phonic Copy. Paul N6EV has a wonderful description of it. Essentially, it's a little different than instant character recognition or instant word recognition, but it's similar in that you are avoiding mental processing, which slows you down. So the idea here is that you hear a letter or letters, and you directly associate it with the sound as if you're pronouncing it. So it's a way of sounding out whatever is coming in. And it can be helpful as a bridge in between instant character recognition and instant word recognition. Because if you're rag chewing, there's always a possibility of words that you've never heard in Morse code being sent to you. And so if it's at a faster speed, it may be difficult to catch these unfamiliar words with instant character recognition because it's difficult to sustain past a certain speed. And I'm more than happy if you want to put the link.
The Morse code or what?
Yeah, I'll let you send it to others if they want to read about Phonic Copy.
Yeah, put it in. Did you put it in chat? In the private chat there? Yeah. Okay, got it. That and comments.
And I've been using this in particular at QRQ speeds. So as I hear something, I'm moving my mouth to help recognize whatever it is I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And then there's another type of copy. I just call it best guess recognition. So this is your guess is based off of grammar, what you've already heard. If you might be filling in a word, if it's a common phrase, you're using context, what is the subject that we're talking about? And this kind of anticipation can work with you or against you. Anticipation really helps when you're right, but when you're wrong, you have to skill to have an open mind. It's like this might be the case, but it might not be. But the thing I want to point out with all these different types of copy, these are not mutually exclusive. It's not uncommon to be using multiple types of copying simultaneously. And you might be relying on one more than the other, depending on kind of what you're expecting.
Got it. Yeah.
Like,
Let me pause real quick here and just interject to the chat. Hey, if there's anything that you're struggling with as far as learning Morse code, please put it in the comments. And I'm sure Kurt would love to hear not only what you're struggling with, but any feedback. He likes to kind of hear these things and kind of work through the mindset of them. So if you have any struggles at all, just go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll make sure we address it.
I had a quick question on that. When I'm sitting and I'm listening and I'm learning letters and stuff, I have a big desire that I also want to take and tap them out on the key as well, while I'm learning. So is that, do you think that's helpful, or do you think that's somewhat detrimental as you're trying to really, get to that instant character recognition point?
That's a wonderful question. So there's some nuance with this. I've gotten feedback from multiple people in particular. Some people, it is critical to have send practice as a part of learning the initial characters. For some people, it helps them feel that underlying rhythm that the code is built up on, and can really assist them and accelerate their learning. And I would suggest that send practice should be a part of it, and you may find that it is absolutely critical for being able to move forward in your proficiency.
Yeah, cool. There's a few comments and questions. Let's get to them real quick if you don't mind. Let's see if I can get up here high enough. Well, there's this. I'm late to the stream, but I wanted to thank Kurt. I often just let the podcast play in the background during my workday instead of listening to music.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I do too, actually. I admit it. And then Kyle, thanks for being here, Kyle, says, I like practicing the CW Ninja's common 3 and 4 letter combos in words. It helps.
Yeah.
And then a question here. Is there a good free Android app to learn Morse code?
Yes, there is. So one thing I want to point out, on the Morse Code Ninja website, there's a resources page.
You want me to share?
Sure.
All right. And we'll go like this. All right. So up at the top, resources.
Yep. So under software, there's an abbreviated list, and then you can also click more.
Let's see. Where's more at?
At the
at the bottom here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So this gives you a comprehensive list of all the different software that I'm aware of that people may want to actively use. And in that list, if you reload the page, because it's the top one, save you a little time.
Okay. Okay.
So this is just the most common software that I think is being used. At the very top, there's a
very, very top, or just at the top of that list?
There it is. It's the Ditto CW Player by WB1Y. Yeah. This is an Android app, and it uses a lot of the practice that I've developed. So
good.
You may find that helpful. It gives you a little bit more flexibility, unlike the pre-recorded stuff that I've generated. If you want to change the tone or change it in a small way that you can't with the audio, this may be a good option for you. It is Android only, so just be aware of that, and it's free.
Yeah, cool. Let's see. We got. Let me bring that back off here. We have. I've listened to Kurt's content more than all the rest put together.
That must be a lot. I'm always amazed. On average, people listen around 200 hours a day on YouTube.
Wow.
Considering it's not entertainment, that just blows my mind.
Yeah. I'm struggling with forming, and this is from Jason Carey. I'm struggling with forming an expected word in my mind before it's finished being sent. Weren't you just speaking to that maybe being good or bad?
So there's a couple things that can happen here. As I mentioned early on, the most difficult skill to initially learn with Morse code is instant character recognition. Once you master that, everything just gets so much easier and a lot more enjoyable. So what can happen, or what might be the case, is if you're not entirely proficient with instant character recognition, so much of your conscious mind is engaged and focused intensely on copying each character that there's not enough room to remember the characters before it. So there's a couple ways of approaching that. One, if that is the case, you may find it helpful to practice at a higher speed with the intent of mastering copying words, especially longer words, with instant character recognition. And you may find it helpful to incrementally copy from 2-letter words to 3, 4, 5, 6. I have practice sets that are specifically set up to help you bridge that gap. In fact, one of the things I'd mentioned, since there are over 200 distinct practice sets, which is a lot, many of them were created to help people who were struggling or needed something specific to help them take a step forward. What I have found and others have found, if the jump is too big, it tends not to be overly proficient practice. So finding practice that's just a little bit more advanced than you're comfortable with can help with efficient practice. So I would focus on really mastering instant character recognition, probably a combination of those two things, practicing both at a higher speed than you're currently practicing at, and practicing at your current speed, but incrementally learning to practice with longer words.
Cool. Next question is, thank you for answering that. That helped me out as well. So Paul says, is there a good order of letters to learn? Start with vowels, question mark?
So this is a wonderful question for multiple reasons. One is it's a historical question. You're not the first person to ask. And to my knowledge, there have been studies looking to see what truly is the most efficient order. And from what I know, and I don't want to be authoritative here, I don't think it makes that much difference overall. There are a few special cases. You want to avoid learning similar letters back to back. So I wouldn't recommend learning E, then I, then S, then H, then 5. These are just all dit characters, just in order of one extra dit. That would be a bad idea because it would encourage you to count dits and das, which we talked about runs counter to mastering instant character recognition. As far as learning vowels first or not, I'm not sure it'd make too much difference, but I'd be interested to know why you would want to.
Yeah. All right. And then Marcus says, KI5UAE, are there sections of the HF bands where people frequently practice Morse code, or is this limited to off-air type devices?
Well, I guess my question is, depends on what you mean by practice. So, it's not uncommon to have scheduled QSOs with the goal of practicing at a certain speed with a friend or someone that you know well. So that tends to happen a little bit higher up generally. So the closer you get to the edge of the band, that tends to be more DX and a little bit faster. I think outside of that, you're more likely to find slower code, and you may find people who are on the air more as a means to practice.
Cool.
Or you could always schedule a Zoom call with your favorite CW buddy that's also learning.
Yeah, Zoom, as long as you turn off the adaptive audio.
Yeah. Okay. AP2FLY radio says, I can work rubber stamp QSOs at 20 words a minute. H and S are still giving me a hard time. Any suggestions for that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. That is a common problem initially. I'm not sure you're going to like my answer. It just gets better with practice. And I find, as a general rule, if I'm struggling with recognition, it's helpful to practice at higher speeds. So that way it feels much easier at whatever target speed that you're interested at.
When I hear, this is Gary, K7UOU, who I personally know, he's here in Arizona. It says, when I hear the initial sequence, I get half the letters, numbers, and then after hearing the characters, I hear the sequence clearly. Is this a sign that I am on the right track?
Can you ask that? I'm not quite sure I understand.
So when he hears the initial sequence, he gets about half the letters and numbers. And then after hearing the characters cleanly...
I think I know what he's asking. So this is, I presume he's listening to the Morse code ninja format, which is you hear it in Morse code, then it's spoken, then it's repeated. I assume that's in context of this.
Probably, yeah. I just
Okay.
go with that, I guess.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is when you are copying without any pre-existing knowledge, that is always going to be much more difficult than if you know what is going to be sent and you're just following along. In fact, most people may find that they can copy maybe 150% faster if they know exactly what's going to be sent. They can just follow along. So this is really common.
Yeah,
And,
that he says correct. Your assumption was correct in the question. Yeah.
Yep, and the speed racing format takes a little bit of advantage of that. The speed racing format gives you whatever slowest speed. It'll start at a high speed and then start backing off. And then on the repeat side, instead of giving you it at the slowest speed, it gives you at the fastest. And people don't have any problem, even if they don't normally practice at that speed, hearing it at that high speed.
Yeah. And Jeff says maybe it's reinforcement ? Yeah.
Yeah, so part of the reason that the repeat exists in the Morse code ninja format is I find that it's efficient practice, that instant feedback is much more helpful, in my opinion, than if you find out 30 seconds or minutes later, if you're practicing using some other method. I think that immediate ability to know what you missed, that you did miss it, and hear what it is so you can try learning it quickly.
Yeah, you want to know right away instead of, finding out 10 minutes later that you've been in the weeds for the last 8 minutes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think we're all caught up on comments and questions. Let's shift gears just a little bit and give you an opportunity to talk about what you're working on right now. Some of your projects that you've been working on that you find interesting.
Yes. I'm very busy. Sometimes I wish I didn't have a full-time job just to play full-time. So one fun thing that I've done, a lot of people love the Morse code ninja stickers. And here recently I was inspired to buy a 3D printer when I went to Ozark Con and listened to Joe's speech on why people might be interested in 3D printers from an amateur radio perspective. I like building kits, and it's a great way just to build a custom enclosure for whatever you're building. But I thought it'd be fun to try turning the Morse code ninja logo into something three-dimensional and to print it. And so I do have something I can show you.
Oh, very good.
Very cool.
So I'm hoping once I trim him down, he's a little bit chunky at the moment. I need to slim him down, maybe make the key a little bit easier for people to print. It requires super gluing it, which is kind of a pain. I'll go ahead and release the STL files. So if you have a 3D printer, you can print it. If you don't, most communities, your local library has a 3D printer, and it's very inexpensive to print. So that's an option if that interests you. The other thing that I was inspired, if some of the questions have revolved around finding the right content. And on the practice page, we've mentioned that there's 200 plus unique practice sets, and that's kind of overwhelming. And I started initially creating filters, so you could filter by sentences or call signs or numbers. And that helped narrow down, help people find what they're looking for quickly. But if you're...
Let's see if we can find that real quick. Where would it be?
Practice?
And then we go down here to right there, right?
Yep. So there's filters. So characters, numbers, words. These all dynamically filter the practice sets to whatever you're interested in. But I added something called a recommendation engine. So this will ask you a series of questions and will filter the list. And in this case, the very first question, if you answer yes, and depending on what you answer, it will direct you to go check out CW Ops and their CW Academy program, or to check out the Long Island CW Club. But this can help drive and help you find what you're looking for. But this still isn't quite sufficient. And I had a wonderful conversation with Charlie and Brian on another way that may be even more helpful to help people kind of plan out what they are going to practice with over time. So the idea is to create tracks. And the first one I'll create will mirror the recommended structure or approach in the QRQ white paper that I released with Jack AA0IZ and Terry WB0JRH. But I'm planning on adding some additional tracks that are more geared towards beginners. I need to figure out a couple of details, technical details, to make sure that works well from a user interface perspective.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think that'll work great. Well, of course, I'm a little biased.
My input was great.
Yeah.
I think that is a very good idea, because I struggle, with, okay, where am I going to go next? And if there's something more laid out, I think that helps keep you inspired, I think.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. That's both great topics. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you wanted to go over? I know, I mean, on the list here, we have some other things like best guess recognition was one, and do's and don'ts, and the mindset, your approach to it. So,
well, one thing I was going to mention, you may be surprised. I'm coming up on, I think, 240-ish unique practice sets, but I actually have a queue of additional practice sets that I've gotten requests to create. And so don't hesitate to reach out if you are encountering a particular problem, or you have an idea that would be helpful to help you reach your proficiency goals. Sorry, that's not my phone. If you do have ideas, please reach out. It does take a little bit of time to create additional practice sets and get them to all the different distribution channels, but I'm always interested in helping others. So if you do have ideas, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Wild Cassandra Video says, fantastic resource. I think she was talking about the filter, which is great. I agree. Then Jeff says, I like the QSOs. Yeah, those are very helpful, I think. And then two lads and a lottie says, great video, guys. I like the name. Scott has a question. W9AVA. Is there a track outlining the basic QSL communication?
I think the question is, do I intend to create a track for those who really want to get on the air? And the answer, if that's your question, yes, I do plan on creating a track to help take you, once you master instant character recognition, suggest practice sets that will help get you ready.
All right. We're getting close to the end. I was just going to type this in chat, but I'll just say it. If you have any questions for Kurt, this is a great opportunity. So any questions or comments, we only have less than 10 minutes left. And so that's kind of the alert that it's getting close. Let's see. So future plans, we kind of talked about that, right? So
we did.
Anything there?
So probably don't want to bore you with the exact list of things I'm planning on creating, but I'm happy to detail that out if you want.
We could go over that maybe. Let's see. Here's a question. One thing I never recall learning back in the day was to use N in place of so cut letters, right? Maybe we could talk for just a second about that.
Yeah. So with cut letters, well, a little bit of history here. So think back to the wired telegraph days. It was very expensive to develop out that infrastructure, and so there was a need to be as brief as possible. And the numbers, as most of you know, they're actually really long. They take a lot of time relatively to send because there's a lot of elements that are a part of them, and especially when you get a lot of DAWs long. Oh. And one had the idea with substituting letters in place of those numbers, and context would tell you that this is a number. So there is a substitution for the numbers, but we don't commonly use all of the substitutions. We typically just substitute N for 9 is a very common one, and then T for 0.
Yeah, those are two most common, right?
Yeah.
And A every once in a while, right?
Perhaps, yeah. I think in the CWTs you might find a few more substitutions, but I would say it's rare, at least from in my experience.
Except for there, right? Yeah. Mike G0RFD says, "What keys do you use, Kurt?"
So I have the Bengali Expedition. What it's called? It's just
a Bengali.
Yeah, it's a Bengali key. Nice.
Yeah.
Magnetic returns.
Nice. That's the way to go. I haven't got mine yet, but I will. Do you just have the one key, or do you or paddle, or do you have more than one?
At the moment, just one, really.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you, Kurt, for all the work you put into this resource. I can't wait to start using it. Well, that's good. That's nice. And then Charlene says, yeah, me too. Points above. And then Kurt, why the old man graphic on your YouTube videos? Hi. I don't know what that means.
So to tell you the truth, one, you have to be careful with copyright. And I wanted something that was in the public domain. And this particular graphic is in the public domain.
Yeah.
I'm not an artist. I did draw the Morse Code Ninja logo.
Nice.
It was really, really hard. I'm not an artist.
We have W7TMD. Do you think practice sending with a script is a good idea?
I think initially that is quite practical. One thing that we didn't talk about was different types of sending and proficiency in sending. So one of the first methods that people learn is, you're looking typically at a piece of paper and you're sending character by character. And that's relatively easy. The next step up is when you're having to do it ad hoc and just completely from your mind. It requires greater muscle memory proficiency. So starting out with a script is a very pragmatic way, especially wherever possible, if you can get on the air sooner rather than later. Having something written out will be practical. It'll take some of that stress off and will help, your first QSOs go much more smoothly.
Yeah. So if you had, this is my question. If you could only give one piece of advice to the CW community at large, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh, that's a hard question.
Isn't it?
I have an entire advice page. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
So one piece of advice. Probably the most important thing is protect your hearing. don't listen to Morse code at a volume that's going to damage your hearing. When you first start practicing, I think a lot of people notice that if you turn up the volume a little, perhaps even a little too loud, it's easier. Don't do that, please. Don't damage.
Amateur radio on the air. Should I be concerned about learning the abbreviations like BK?
So there are a handful of abbreviations that you should learn because you're going to hear them, and BT, BK, SK are some of the more common ones. You probably initially don't need to learn the large list of abbreviations, but the top 4 or 5 abbreviations and pro signs, I personally learn those.
BK for sure. I think I hear that all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and a few others. So what do you? This is a political controversial question, I think. Don, thank you for asking it. I think. What do you think of contesters using total bots or at speeds over 100 words a minute?
So the interesting thing about contesting is for many people, it tends to be more about taking whatever advantage that they can. And ultimately, contesting is about fun. So if it's fun, I say, great. If it's not fun for you to contest with a lot of aids and assistance, don't. But in my opinion, any use of CW that keeps the art alive, to me, I think that's great.
Yeah, good comment there. Okay, Kurt, I think we're about there. We've only got a couple of minutes. I just want to remind everybody who's listening and in chat that don't forget that directly following this stream in just a minute or two, we're going to have go over to Jason's channel for the Hamfest, the YouTubers Hamfest wrap up, and there's also a giveaway. But I'd like to give Dan a chance to anything he wants to say in departing, and then we'll give you the last word, Kurt. So go ahead, Dan.
Kurt, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate all the work you put into the website, and especially all the files. I do enjoy listening to them. Unfortunately, my commute now, I was really excited because I was going to have to go to the office, but my commute is only like 2 minutes long, which makes it kind of difficult. So I guess maybe what I'll have to do is start listening on my lunch hour and when I'm having a little downtime. So, but they're really great, and I really appreciate all the work you put into them.
Yeah, well, Kurt, I really do as well. I can't thank you enough for coming on, and I think this stream has been very helpful to a lot of people, which and I know they appreciate, and they've said as much in the comments. Appreciate you coming. Normally, I'd stay around after and chat with you, but I'm going to hop right over into the next stream. So I'll catch up with you though. Really, thank you so much for being here. So any parting thoughts before we go?
Yeah, well, thank you both, Charlie and Dan. It's been my pleasure, and I just want to leave everyone with this idea. We live in the golden age of Morse code and CW. There hasn't been a better time to learn. There are just so many resources that may fit your schedule or your specific needs or the way that you learn. So, if my resources don't work for you, try something else. There is just oodles and oodles of resources out there.
Yeah. Okay, Kurt. Thank you. See you, everybody in the chat, and all of you guys watching. And Dan, catch you later, and I'll catch up with you, Kurt. Bye-bye.
33.